Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing stages your ex goes through before making contact. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. So now let's get back into today's podcast. And today we are discussing stages your ex goes through before making contact. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you will often wonder about the stages that your ex will likely go through. In today's podcast, I'll be discussing 3 stages your ex will likely go through before making contact. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is their own path. So first of all, it's very important for me to say that there is no 100% guaranteed way to get your ex back. Nothing works 100% of the time and nothing fails 100% of the time. So what you need to understand is that whatever stages that your friends have told you about, the stages that I'm going to tell you about, the stages that you may have heard about in any possible way that a dumper may go through is just that. They may go through. Now I'm going to be using my experience and research to tell you the most likely stages that your ex, the dumper, is going to go through, but there is no guaranteed way of predicting precisely what is going to happen to your ex and your dumper. And unfortunately for some dumpies, they will never hear from their ex, the dumper, again. But from my research and experience, I believe that dumpies have a great opportunity to hear from their ex again most of the time. And that's why in today's podcast, I'm going to be breaking this up into 3 likely stages that your ex is going to be going through before they get to the moment of considering making contact. And for most dumpers, the moment where they do make contact. So like I said, point number 1 is their own path. And that is because after the breakup has taken place, after the breakup has been actioned, a dumper is going to go on their own path. That is why they ended the relationship. Somebody ends a relationship when they do not feel comfortable within the connection. They do not believe and do not feel that moving forward they're going to get the fulfillment and the satisfaction within this romance. So what does this mean? Well, what we often see is that the dumper will go on their own path. They've ended the relationship, they're doing their own thing. They want to go this way, and they don't believe that you coming along with them is going to satisfy them in the long term. They do not believe they will have a fulfilling relationship with you for various potential reasons. Now, this doesn't mean that they might not change their mind in the future, as you will see through today's podcast. But point number 1, stage number 1, is a dumper will be going on their own path. We have to accept this, we have to understand this. We have to realise that the first stage that an ex, a dumper, is going to go through is not thinking about you, the dumpee. Now, this doesn't mean they're not going to think of you during moments of triggers, during moments of their everyday life, especially soon after the breakup. Of course, you're going to pop in and out of their mind. You will always be part of their life story, just as they will always be part of yours. But during the initial stage after a breakup, a dumper is going to be focused on their own path. They're going to be entering what I like to call the single honeymoon period. And that is where a dumper, for 6 to 12 months on average, is going to be focusing on doing their thing, living their life, and going on their experiences that they feel that they couldn't do within the relationship with you. Now, this could be a whole manner of situations. It could be something really elaborate, like they're travelling around the world, or it could be something where they're just spending more time with their local friends, but perhaps they didn't see as much during your connection. What we have to understand during point number 1, their own path, is that a dumper is very unlikely to want to reconnect at this stage. You have to realise, dumpies, that at the time of a breakup, the dumper is going to have felt a very low level of romantic emotional attraction for you. The reason why they've ended this relationship is because this level of attraction has hit the necessary low point, and they are only going to want to reconnect with you if and when this attraction level raises. So at the time of a breakup and soon after, as you can imagine, this level is still likely to remain low. And that is why a dumpee is unlikely to hear from their ex-dumper in the period of time after the breakup has been finalised. Now, of course, when a breakup takes place, it doesn't necessarily mean that the dust has settled straight away. You might have been dumped on a Tuesday, but you hear from your ex on a Wednesday or a Thursday and they say, look, let's try and sort this out. That is completely feasible. What I'm talking about is when the dust has settled. Now, maybe this will be during the time of a breakup. Maybe you are together, maybe you're talking on the phone, maybe everything's been said and it is clear the dust has settled. But perhaps it hasn't. Maybe they sent you a text. Maybe there was an argument. Maybe there is a lot more still to be said, and therefore the dust hasn't settled on the breakup. And this could be something which for days or maybe even weeks after the actual comment of I'm ending this relationship, it could still be going on. But once the dust has been settled, and you will know in your heart when this is, you will know whether it was instantly, days or weeks later. Once everything is clear in the dumper's mind, that is when they're going to be focusing on their own path. And they are unlikely to try to reconnect with their dumpee during this time. So the first stage for you dumpees to recognise in your ex-dumper is a stage where you are unlikely to hear from them in the idea of them wanting to reconnect with you. They might reach out to you if they've left their work laptop at your house and they want to pick it up, but they're unlikely 4 weeks down the line, for instance, to reach out to you and say, hey, let's get back together. That normally is in the period of time where the dust has settled, but they're certainly concentrating on their own path. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast about stages your ex goes through before making contact. And point number 2 is resistance. So point number 2 is what we call the mid-game. This is a period of time where your ex-dumper has gone on their own path for a while, but perhaps they haven't lived that life for as long as they would want to. But they could have come across some moments where it doesn't feel as great as it once did. Maybe they've been spending a lot of time with friends, and those friends have now got into relationships. Perhaps your ex-dumper is now starting to live a single life in a single way in every single element because the friendship group they've jumped back into may have started to dismantle. Maybe your ex-dumper is doing things now which a few months ago felt great and exciting and now feels mundane and boring. So this is the mid-game. Your ex-dumper is not quite ready to really self-reflect. They're still wanting to go through that single honeymoon period. However, they have started to realise that all is not what it seems. Not everything remains exciting forever. And often this is when a dumper will start to go through the resistance stage. This is a period of time where the dumper is starting to have fleeting moments in their mind about, have I made the right decision? Yeah, look, I want to concentrate on doing my own thing. Yes, it was the right decision. I want to keep going this path. And there could be other reasons as for why they're thinking this. Maybe they've started dating somebody new. And as a dumpee, you don't want to hear this, but it's possible. However, they may have started to realise already that this new connection is not as good as they hoped. It's very difficult to find a long-term connection. So the odds of them finding a long-term relationship soon after a breakup from a prior long-term relationship is very slim indeed. So maybe your ex-dumper has started dating somebody new and they're thinking, I don't know if this feels right. Look, I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to try. So this again is the resistance. They're starting to think maybe they've made a mistake in some ways, but no, they're going to keep fighting and pushing forward with their own thoughts. Maybe their own friends and family have even said, hey, you made a mistake. Your dumpee was a great person. Shouldn't you be getting back together? And they're saying back to them, no, I made my choice. That's what I'm going to do. So resistance is the mid-game. This is when a dumper is still going to be wanting to push forward doing their own thing, but they're starting to recognise that not everything is sunshine and rainbows within their life. So if you're going through a breakup and you would like support, if you want to increase the chance of trying to get your ex back, if you want life coaching, if you want to move forward and meet somebody new, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where you can speak one-on-one about your specific unique circumstances. I can become your coach and your teammate, and if you would like me to be so, then please go to my website www.dateme.tips for more details on my audio coaching service. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast about stages your ex goes through before making contact. And point number 3 is admission. So we've just gone through resistance and now there is admission. And this is the admission that potentially their life is not going the way that they hoped. Every dumper is going to get to a point where they have to self-reflect. Every dumper is going to get to a point where they have to look in the mirror, physically and metaphorically, and ask themselves the question, have I made the right choice? Is my life any better now, 6, 9, 12 months later on average, in comparison to how it was before? Now, I've just said 6, 9, 12 months. It could be sooner. Like I said at the beginning of today's podcast, there is no guarantees here. You could be the dumpy who hears from their ex after a matter of weeks, or unfortunately, you could be a dumpy who never hears from their ex but dumper again. What I'm telling you here is from my own research, and what I see is that dumpers normally take around the 6-month mark to really hit this point where they do self-reflect. It can be longer, it can be sooner, and sometimes it never happens at all. But I would say that's the average. And I would say if you're a dumpy and you're really trying to focus on the future and what you should be expecting, I would say there is an excellent chance that you will hear from your ex again. I would say most dumpies, if they do everything right, are going to hear from their ex or dumper again. It doesn't mean you're going to get back together necessarily. It doesn't even mean necessarily that you want to get back with them when you hear from your ex. But the point is that most dumpers will self-reflect. And that is because most dumpers will go through the admission stage, the admission that their life isn't what they hoped. The reason for this is, like I said a little earlier, maybe friends they're spending time with have got into relationships themselves and they are now living a single life in every way, shape or form. Additionally, a dumper may have tried to connect with somebody new and realised it's a bad connection. It's very, very hard to find a long-term connection, and they know that they had one with you and they know that you loved them, and they're now thinking, why did I throw that away? It's harder than I thought. The grass isn't always greener. On top of all of this, a dumper may have goals and aspirations but possibly haven't gone to plan. It can be very difficult sometimes when you remove yourself from somebody who loves you. You're the dumpy, your ex the dumper has deliberately ended this connection. They're doing their own thing. They're setting themselves goals and targets. And if they don't hit those goals and targets like they would have hoped to have done, this is when they can really start to feel like maybe I've made an error. I'm not getting that love and affection that I used to have. I'm missing that. That type of thought creates the admission stage I'm talking about. And this is when they'll self-reflect. And ultimately, at this point, your expert dumper will either reach out to you or they will persist with their single life. And the reason why they might reach out to you or not will depend on whether they have grown enough romantic emotional attraction for you or not during this interim period. So what can you do to increase that chance? What can you do to increase the chance of your expert dumper growing the attraction so that when they self-reflect, when they go through the admission stage, that they actually want to reach out to you? Well, I've given so many hints, tips and advice in my previous podcast. There's hundreds of them here on my YouTube channel. So please subscribe to my channel, ring the bell for notifications and check out the playlists. I would say initially implement my version of the no contact rule, but listen to the hints, tips and advice I give in other podcasts. And if you would like one-on-one support for your specific circumstances, consider my audio coaching service, because me and you can speak one-on-one there. And this isn't going to be the generalised support that I have to give during my podcasts. Ultimately, as a dumpy, you will be fine whatever happens. It might not feel that way right now, but I promise you, with or without your ex, you will have a positive future. They do not define you. And if they don't come back into your life, you can and will find somebody even better. And even if they do come back into your life, you are not obligated to reconnect with them. If you go through growth, if you become a better person today than you were yesterday, and a better person tomorrow than you are currently today, then if and when your expert dumper reaches out to you, you might not want to reconnect. You have grown, they probably haven't. A lot of dumpers do not put in the work during this time. A lot of dumpers don't grow, and sometimes they come back to a dumpy, and the dumpy has grown so much, they no longer align. Whatever your situation, please let me know in the YouTube comments, and remember, as a dumpy, your future is bright whatever happens. But as for the points and the stages in today's podcast, These are the likely stages that your expert dumper will go through before they get to the moment where they might contact you. And I would say a lot of the time that they will. They go on their own path, they show resistance, and ultimately they have to admit to themselves that maybe their life isn't going how they planned. At that moment, that is when you may hear from them. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.